Hi all, this is Maria Clark at Sweet Willow Designs. Welcome to my studio. Today's project is this really pretty mountain with a night sky. I hope you love it. Let's get started. I started this painting back at the end of 2019, and because of the health issues for my son, I stopped painting for about 7 months or 6 months, and I'm just now trying to get back into it. I do want to apologize a little bit for not getting back for comments and things like that. I've been pretty much off Facebook for a long time, and just trying to help with my son who's very ill, and just keep it all together like all of you are doing every day. And then we're hit with this additional struggle with the COVID and all that comes with that. So I really hope you all are doing well. I'm doing well. It's just a lot to get back. So please don't be disappointed by that. But I try to get back to the comments. I'm doing better because we're in a little bit of a lull right now, moving into some new treatments. So I hope that you all are doing well. Thanks so much for joining me in this project today. I picked this mountain cutout from Michael's, and I absolutely loved it. So I did this painting, and this piece is about 28 inches by just over 10.5 inches. And I wanted to be able to share painting this with you, but I knew that most of you, probably all of you, would not be able to find this particular cutout, even though I love it and I wish they carried more. But I decided to go ahead and do a smaller version that we could all enjoy. It's not exact, but it's a stylized version. And in this particular view, you can see that I painted it on a 9x12 canvas, which we'll do in this project, and then I matted it on an 11x14 canvas and put it in a frame. So in my Etsy shop, there is a traceable, and it's got a discussion of the printing instructions and the tools. And then it's got a series of the mandalas. So what we're looking at now is the mountain mandala that will fit on an 8x10 canvas, a round mandala to fit on an 8x8, a 12-inch a mandala that will fit on a 12x12 canvas, and you can see that prints on 2 pages, so you have to tape those together, and then the mountain mandala that will fit on a 9x12 canvas. So this is really a fun project, and I wanted you to be able to enjoy it with me. So check that out if you're interested. So the tools and materials that we're going to use in this project is a 9x12 canvas. I'm using my DecoArt chalky finish paint for the background. And then I'll use the Saral transfer paper. And I'm going to be using this Sharpie. This is a water-based Sharpie. You could use the oil-based. It's in fine and gold. These are all the colors I'll be using. I'll be using Snow, Titanium White, Royal Fuchsia, Carousel Pink, Coral, Brilliant Purple, Wild Orchid, Baby Blue, Ocean Blue, Saffron Yellow, and Festive Green. And these are all linked in the description below. These are the DecoArt Americana. I'll be using the DecoArt Americana DuraClear in matte and ultra matte. We'll need a flat brush, a wide flat brush. I'll need some kind of paper plate or foam plate in my case, and then I'm using a sponge. Now this sponge is just a kitchen sponge. I cut it from a larger piece, and I like the texture in it, so just look, see what kind of sponges you have, and then my regular dotting tools. So when you get the traceable and print it, and there are printing instructions in the PDF, you have to be careful that you print this at actual size so that you get the right size. It'll print, if you're doing the 9x12, it'll print on 2 pages because most of our printers, of course, are that size format. And on mine, when I print it, there's this little channel, let me close in here. There's a little bit of an overlap so that it's easy to put these 2 pieces together. On my printer, there's this little white channel here, little blank space. So I just am going to cut that off to make it easier for me to line my pieces up. So just get a pair of scissors and cut, if you have that, cut that little piece off. Cut it close to the printing or at the printing mark. Because this overlaps, you don't have to worry about cutting off some of it. And then it's just a matter of overlapping these 2 pages and lining them up. So just fiddle around with it until you get them lined up. And I just kind of, there you go. Start to line it up like that. And just adjust it slightly as you need to. Once it's lined up, I'll take just a couple pieces of tape, and I'm going to tape that together. Then what I'm going to do is use some packing tape, and this can be any kind of packing tape, doesn't really matter what the brand is, but I'm going to use this packing tape and I'm going to cover up the design. And I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. I'm going to be using this as a mask, so it's going to get paint on it, and so I want that piece to be a bit sturdy. So just overlap your packing tape a little bit so that you can get all of this covered. And I will cover both the front and the back so that I get a nice sturdy piece. So just cover up the back roughly in the same position, as you did the front. Doesn't have to be exact. You do want to overlap the tape just slightly though. And then this is going to serve another purpose. So it's going to be my mask, but it's also going to serve as a painting palette, so to speak. So I can test out my painting design, I can test out the colors that I want, and it'll wipe off or peel off. And then we're just going to cut it out. Just follow the lines and cut all the way around. I'm going to save that top piece because I may use it again in another part of this project. We'll see when I get to it, but you can save the top part in case you want to do some additional masking. Okay, now I've got this piece cut out and it's nice and sturdy, which is exactly what I want. So I'll get my canvas. Again, this is a 9x12 canvas, and it's been coated with a couple of coats of the DecoArt Chalky Finish Black paint. Now, I want to mention just a couple of things here. For this project, the way I do it, I'm going to actually put my mask at the very bottom of the canvas. But if you don't want to frame it in the way I'm going to frame it, you just want to put it in a regular frame, then be sure that you put this canvas in a frame and measure around the outside edge so you know what the frame is going to cover up. And then what I would do is move my mask up slightly so that I don't lose any of that dotting at the very bottom. You will want to either mask off the bottom or just paint over it because it's going to be covered up by the frame. So when I go off edge, you'll see what I mean by that. So check that out so that you make sure that you're not going to cover up some of your precious dotting. And then for the sides, you can just bring in the side lines just slightly to match your canvas. So then I'm going to just tape this on. I am going to tape it on because I'm going to be doing some painting over that mask, and I want to have a little bit of stability in the mask. So I'll just put three pieces of tape, one on either side, lining it up, and then one on the bottom. And then I'll just keep that all taped on when I go ahead and trace it. So just get a few pieces, enough to hold it on there nicely. And then with the top piece, the top part of the mountain, I'm not going to put any tape there. I'll just hold that down when I actually am doing my my night sky. All right, now we're ready to go. So here's the sponge that I'm going to use, and I just cut it off. This is a kitchen sponge. I just cut it off of that larger sponge. You can cut this down to whatever sizes, and I'll take a little piece of that because I'm going to put a little bit of white in, and I just want a smaller piece. The colors that I'm going to use there are the brilliant purple and the ocean blue and a little bit of white. I thought I might use that fuchsia that I showed, but I ended up not using that. So it's the brilliant purple, ocean blue, and white. And then for the sponge, I'm taking off the sharp edge just by pulling off some of that sponge. I have a foam plate. You can see that, like most sort of stenciling type designs that you use a mask, I am putting the paint on my sponge, and then I'm dabbing quite a bit of it off because I don't want it to be too wet and seep under the edge of that mask for the mountains, because I want that to be pretty crisp. And then it's just a matter of applying paint. Here it is, the brilliant purple, and I'm just applying it in a night sky. I'm just moving that sponge around so that I get a variation in the pattern. Now I'm daubing it on. I do want that black to show through. So I'm just being fairly light in my application, and I'll do a couple of coats. Same sponge. I didn't rinse or anything. I'm using now the ocean blue and I'll just go right over that. I'm not over blending these two colors. I want to see a lot of that texture because I really want it to simulate how when you're looking up in the sky, you see a lot of texture in the night sky. Now, if you didn't want to do this particular technique, you could just paint the top of the sky or do anything else you wanted to. You could do a sunset. You could do all kinds of different techniques on that top part of the sky. So I just like this particular one for this pattern. Around the mountain, I am trying to get a fairly crisp line. Again, my paint's not wet. But I am going over it because I want to be quite a definition there, even though we're going to use a little bit of the marker. I want some definition there at the mountain tops. So just keep dabbing it on until you get something that's pleasing. Again, you don't want to overblend because you do want to see that texture and you want to see the black showing through. I will let this dry a little bit in between my different layers of paint so that I get some crispness in the paint and it's not blending. Now I'm going to put just a little drop of white and that smaller sponge that I cut off, and then just dip it in and do the same thing to wipe it off. And now I'm putting in a little bit of reflection from what would be either clouds in the sky, in the night sky, or something like that. So I'm putting a little bit of the white. You can see I'm using it very, very sparingly because we're going to go back and we're going to add some stars at the end here. So I'm just kind of moving it around and just adding a little bit of that white. And like I mentioned, I'm just doing an additional layer to make sure that I've got the colors that I want there. And I think that looks good. All right, I've taken off the tape at the very bottom and I'm going to slip a sheet of that Saral transfer paper underneath the stencil and just keep it in place so it doesn't move around. And then I'll use one of my ball styluses to just trace that outline. So trace all around, make sure that you've got everything traced out because it's really hard to put it back down once you take it off. So I'll just do that tracing. I'll pull it out, take off that tape, and then I can look underneath. Anything that maybe I might have missed, I can use my Soline ceramic pencil to just go in and fill that in. Doesn't that look pretty? Oh, that dark, that black of the mountain is so nice. All right, and you can take a look at this. That looks really good. And just brush off a little of that transfer dust. All right, that looks good. Our sky's ready. Now we're ready to start painting. I've got a crisp edge here. Now I'm going to take my markers. Now, these are the Sharpie water-based markers, and I got one in extra fine and fine, and I did a little test on the back. I didn't actually think they were very fine, to tell you the truth. I think they're a little bit thick, but I'm going to end up using what is called the fine marker, and that will give me a nice bold line. Shake it up. Prime it by pumping it just a little bit, and we're ready to start. Now on this edge, I do want a sharp, crisp edge. I don't want to use a ruler because I find that tends to smear the paint. So I'm just free-forming it, and I think I can generally do a pretty good job. If you do use a ruler or some kind of guide, just be sure that you know how you take it off, because this paint is wet, so it could smear a little bit. But you know what? Use the things that help you paint. Is my philosophy, and if a ruler helps, then use a ruler. All right, and now I'm just going to follow the outlines, keeping my hands out of that paint, and we'll just outline all of this. All right, it's all outlined, and that gold really pops on the black. I think that's really looking nice. Now we're ready to start dotting. I'm starting off with a color called Coral. The lights are a little bright, so you might not be able to see it, but I'm using my H8 5mm and dropping a larger dot of coral, and then I'm using my nail dotter to fill in and walk a few dots, fill in that space. Now you'll notice I'm not going all the way either to the top or the bottom of that petal. I'm going to come back in with smaller tool and put a smaller fine dot at the top and bottom. Now I'm going to go into the next petal, and I'm using my G6 4mm and the Brilliant Purple, and I'll drop a larger dot at the very top of that petal, and then I'll use a nail dotter, a large nail dotter, to walk the dots down close to the gold line. And then I'll just take a really fine stylus and drop a little teeny bit at the top of each of those, tip of each of those petals. Now I'm going in with the color Royal Fuchsia, and I'm using my I9 5.5mm and putting a dot of that Royal Fuchsia, and then I'll use a medium nail dotter, walk some dots around it. I'm going to form a little flower here. Then I'm going in with a very small nail dotter and some Festive green. That green just came out of nowhere. I only use it this one time in this pattern. To form some little leaves. And just walk the dots down each side and then fill in the space with, as you can. Now, if you can't fill it in because you don't have enough space, that's great. Don't do that. Don't worry about that. You could even just put one drop of a color. You don't have to use green. You could use some other color if you wanted. We'll get that all the way up on each one of these petals. All right, now I'm going in with my G6 4mm, and this is the Carousel Pink. And I'm just using these different colors in the same color family for a little bit of contrast. And then I'll nail dotter and walk a few dots to meet the point of that petal. I'm going to do that all the way around. Now I'm just filling in a little bit of space with a small nail dotter. And just continues some spacing. I had put 3 little dots there, but I didn't end up liking the way that looked, so I just am going with a single dot. So just took that off and placed my single dot. And here's how we're looking so far. Now I'm going in with my H8 5mm and a color called Baby Blue, and I'll just drop 3 dots. You can see I'm starting to go off the edge a little bit there. Now I'm coming in with my G6 4mm and Ocean Blue. And I'm going to start to dot around. Now I want to show you this. I started dotting around and I didn't like it, so I let it dry and I just covered it up with some of the background paint. You can do that if you don't get the paint while it's wet. And also, Sometimes you have too much wet paint next to each other. It might be best to let it dry and cover it up with the black background in this case, and you won't even see it. It's perfect. So then you can just dot right over it, which is what I did on these petals. I just didn't like the way my original dotting looked, so I just wiped them out and redotted. Now fill in a little more space, little tip with the petals. I'm using a very fine, my finest, smallest nail dotter for this. Now I'm ready to move on to the next petals. I'm using my P16 11.5 millimeter, and I'm using the color Coral. I'm dropping that dot slightly above the tip of the petal below it because I am going to walk some dots around it, so I want to have a little bit of space. Now I'm going to walk some dots around this large one, and I'm going to use a large nail dotter and then just walk as far as I can. I'm going to move down to a smaller tool, redot some of those to get the sizing right, and then I'll carry that all the way around. So that's something that I have to do to keep my paint moving, and it's a technique that you can try out. So I'll just keep changing out the size of my tool so it's a little smaller, and then redot some of them and then move the dotting down. Starting at the tip of that petal, I'm going to do this, walk the dots with a series of tools till I get all the way to that point. So I didn't like that one, got a little wonky towards the end there. So I'm going to go ahead and use a damp Q-tip and just pull it off. I did want you to notice that I'm really close to that gold line, and some of that gold paint may come off. It's water-based, so just when you're finishing up, I always look at everything to see if I need to draw over something again or clean something up. So just take notice of that. Now I'm using my G6 4 millimeter in same color. This is the Coral. And I'll put the 2 dots there at the corners of those petals, and then I'll walk some dots up to meet the previous line. And then I'll fill in a little space with my smallest nail dotter. Now I'm using my G6 4 millimeter and the Carousel pink. And then I'll walk a few dots with the pink. A little drop at the top. And then I will fill in a little bit of space. I'm using my smallest nail dotter and the Carousel pink. All right, I'll do that on each of the petals, and here's just a look at it on the last petal. Okay, here's how we look so far. We're going to move out to our last series of petals. I'm using my P16 11.5 millimeter and a color called Wild Orchid. And I'm moving that, as you can see, that dot is above the tip of the previous petal. I want to give myself space because I'm going to dot around that. So just move it up a little bit. Now using my largest nail dotter and the same color, I'm going to put equal size dots all the way around, so north, south, east, west. And I'll see how many I can get in the remaining space, which is 2. And I'll just go all the way around. Now I'm using my I9 5.5 and the Brilliant Purple. And I'll place 2 dots at the bottom of that petal. And 3 dots at the top. At the top here, you may need to move down in the size of your tool, just depends on how much space you have there, so just make those adjustments. Using my large nail dotter, I'm going to walk the dots from the bottom up and then from the top down. I want them to meet, I want the largest dots to be next to that large Brilliant Purple and then smaller as they hit the middle. Hope that makes sense. You can see what I'm doing here. And then I'll use a smaller nail dotter to just fill in some of that space. We'll do that all the way around, and then of course I'll go off the edge on some of it. I did this one a little different order. All right, I did that all the way around on each of those petals. Isn't that pretty? I just love the way that looks. It's really pretty. Now I'm going to do the rounds, the round lines on each of these, and they're going to radiate out from that mandala. So that's why I have so many grids here, because this is where I think I run into trouble. You probably run into trouble getting those rounds as clean as possible. So I put enough grid marks there for you. I'm using my I9 5.5 millimeter and Saffron yellow, and I'm just going all the way around. Using those guide marks, you can see I'm putting this row on the cross mark. You can change out the size of the tools you use too. If you wanted smaller dots and more of them, you could certainly adjust the sizing as you wish. Now I'm going to do my second row, and I'm going to use the Brilliant Purple, and I'm going to alternate. So instead of doing it on the cross, I'm doing it in the middle on each one of those lines. So it's alternating from the previous row. And I'm doing that because I want to put some, walk some of the dots up and down from each one of those larger ones. You can skip ahead a little bit or refer to the first picture where you can see I've kind of got these radiating rows. Now I'm going in with the ocean blue, and I'm putting them back on alternating. Now I'm back on the cross lines. And this is where I'm going to go off the mountain a little bit. So I'm just putting a piece of paper down and painting over that, and I can lift up the extra paint. Be a little careful. I do have to go back in with the Q-tip and kind of clean that line up a little bit. Actually, the Q-tip was not the best thing to use for this particular one because it's too big, unless you have those really fine cotton tips. So I actually got a very small brush. It's not a nail brush, but a brush, and I just cleaned up that line. And then if I have to go over it with a Sharpie again, I can do that. It helps to mask, but sometimes it pulls that paint, so you want to kind of clean it up a little bit. All right, now I'm going in with fuchsia, and again, I'm alternating. All right, now I'm going in with my nail dotter, and you can see that I'm going to start to walk some dots up and down from that center large dot. And this is why I placed all my dots on, my larger dots on first, because it'll help guide when I walk the dots. I think I might get straighter lines that way, so I tried it this way and it worked out well. And then you'll just do that all on each of the rows. Now, sometimes you're only going to get 2, sometimes I get 3 walk the dots, sometimes I get 2. And then the last thing is to radiate them out from the fuchsia. Now, I got some wonkiness here on some of these, so I let this dry, and then you can see I come back and I'm just going to paint over some of the ones that I thought were a little bit wonky, and I'll just redot those once the paint's dry. This is it. We're not finished, but we're close. So all the dotting is done, and I've let this, I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to let it dry really well before I do anything else to the sky or do any more top dotting or anything like that. So this is going to dry. All right, I wanted to show you this stencil. This is the traceable, right, that we put the tape over. And I tried out different colors. I tried out different sizes. I let it dry, and it just peels right off. So that's kind of nice. You can also wipe it off when the paint's wet. But I just peeled it off. So this makes a really nice practice guide. So keep that in mind as you're doing your painting, that you can always practice it. Just put a little packing tape over it or laminate it in some way, or one of those protector sheets, and you're able to practice the colors or test out colors. Now I'm doing my top dotting. This is going to go fast. I'm just alternating colors on top of the other colors. I'm using all of the same colors that I used in the original palette. I'm just looking for a little bit of contrast in the top dots. So you can see that I put the carousel pink on the fuchsia, and I put fuchsia on the coral. So just a little bit of top dotting, and do as much as you like here. This is the saffron yellow going on the purple. That's a great combination. So do as much top dotting as you wish. I'm going to end up doing 3 layers of top dotting on some of these. Gives a lot of depth when you add the top dotting, but you don't have to do that if you don't want. You can slow this video up or speed it up as you wish, or pause it if you want to get a closer look at something. All right, now I'm doing the top dotting on the rainbow there. It's not true rainbow colors, but I use the brilliant purple on the saffron yellow. I use the fuchsia on the brilliant purple, and I use wild orchid on the ocean blue, and then the last one I use the coral on the fuchsia row. And then I'm just going to dot a few little dots around each of the edges to fill in some of that space, and I use the royal fuchsia. Now we're going to put some stars in the sky. I'm using a little bit of white and a small nail dotter. I don't want to overdo the sky. But you can see I'm just randomly placing dots. Sometimes they're closer together, sometimes they're further apart. You could also use your mask and splatter some paint on there if you wanted to do that. Now here's a close-up of this piece, and it's essentially finished. I'm going to go in with a little bit more top dotting just to finish it up, but you can get a little look at it here, and it really looks pretty. I thought about doing a little bit of gold sponge painting at the top of the mountains, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it like this right now. Now I wanted to show you how I'm going to frame this. This is a 9x12 canvas that I painted on, and I've got an 11x14 background. So that background is painted with the same paint as the background for the 9x12 canvas, and it gives me a 1-inch border. You could use also, if you wanted to do this, you could maybe use a foam board or something like that. But it's easy enough for me to just go ahead and place it on another canvas, and it works perfectly in the frame. So here we go. And then I'll just mark around the 11x14 canvas as to where the 9x12 is going to fit. And then it's a matter of simply gluing it down. And I'm using just E6000 type glue. And then I've got this 11x14 frame that I'm going to put it in. This is just a frame from Michaels. I always wait till they have their sales on frames. They're 2 for 1 or whatever. And I have my 11x14 frame. So I've already glued this down, and that's all dry, by the way, and varnished. I put 3 coats of the DuraClear Ultra Matte on the 11x14 black canvas, and I put 3 coats of the DuraClear matte on the painted canvas. And then I'll just put everything back in. I always leave the glass and everything in, just because it's hard for me to store it, frankly. And I might change out this frame, you never know. I have to use my paintbrush to help me push down those little cleats. Oh, and the reveal. Oh, I love it. I think it's so pretty, you guys. I hope you enjoy this. It looks great in the frame. That black is just such a nice, stark contrast that it really sets off the painting. Here it is on my wall. It's gorgeous. I hope you love this painting. Please leave me a comment. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit that notification bell. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. I so much love painting with you. Thanks for joining me in my studio. Take care.